Today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of a villain. Now, I've talked about SJWs as being villains of the story in real life, and part of the problem that I am seeing, and I kind of blame this on the Disney trend of creating villains, but it's this idea of they become just this one dimensional person. So I wanted to talk a bit about real villains or complex villains because if we're going to say that villains are the hero of their own story, that usually means that they're going to need an applicable backstory. That means that they're going to need this motivation. And I know that a lot of writers, because it's kind of an easy trope, but they do it around this thing of pain. Someone hurt them, therefore they're going to, kind of become a villain. And I think it can work well because it's kind of a trope, and those kind of tropes work for a reason. But I've been thinking about my own villain character, and I've been thinking about what is it that really motivates her? And is it simply a matter of, she's just feeling all this pain? Because I don't believe that pain is simply the reason alone. I think, a lot of times, like I look at a lot of like the stuff that goes on in the Twitter, and I look at how they don't like to listen. I look at how they all speak exactly the same. I look at how they feel very comfortable in bullying people and how it goes completely over their head that they're bullying people. And you begin to realize that whether they've been hurt in the past or not, because let's be honest, pretty much all people have gone through some sort of pain in their past. I think, for them in particular, it's this idea of, having been misinformed. And because you just want to be upset, because you automatically think you're right, because that's what progressivism sort of teaches them is that no matter what, they're always right. And so, because they believe that they're on the right side of history, facts don't actually matter to them and they won't go out of their way to actually look at things. And that's why when you talk to people who have, become more conservative or more libertarian, I, put my own story in there. It really kind of started with this need to start looking things up and start determining for myself, and looking for facts and just sitting and thinking. So, because we're talking about villains, I wanted to talk, and I kind of wanted to pick apart one of my favorite villains. And he's one of my favorite villains because I get a visceral reaction every time I read about him. And that would be Lex Luthor. So here's the thing. When they did the Superman rebirth and they tried to make Lex Luthor sort of like this hero, I think that was actually a great job because it made me hate him even more because it made you sort of like band together with the Superman that we all knew because it's like we were just waiting for that time. We're waiting for that moment for Lex Luthor to show that he was still a villain. And I thought about it because it really had to do more with Lex Luthor's motivations at that time. And his motivations, to him, appeared good because he believed in his own mind that he was a hero. And that's why, the saying of the villain is the hero in their own story, because of that sort of motivation. For him, he didn't like Superman because Superman was powerful. Superman could not be stopped. So the idea of if Superman turned around and decided that he wanted to be bad, no one would be able to stop him. And that grated, because, there's also that element of jealousy that goes along with it. Lois Lane's father, also in that, such a powerful alien being cannot be stopped. I have a problem with that because what happens if he turned on us? And it kind of turns him because that's his motivation of, well, I want to protect, but the lengths that you're willing to go to protect, kind of takes you into villainous territory, because now what you're doing is you're starting to, because it's going to be a little bit ironic because Superman is not human, but you're dehumanizing him in a way because you need to dehumanize. And, you know, I think that's kind of like the beauty to a bit. Like that's kind of like the beauty of, because when you sit there and you peel back, and it's sort of like peeling back the layers of an onion, you know, or I guess like the layers in a flower. You want something slightly different, but but it's the idea of the deeper that you go, the more you uncover, the more you discover. And I know that they've kind of like changed Lex Luthor's kind of background, and they've retconned some things. And so I know that in this current time of the rebirth, where, because this is the point that I came back to comics and during the rebirth, he grew up in Smallville with Superman. And like, I don't know what happened, but I know for him, his motivation was he wanted to be Superman because he wanted to be special. He wanted the whole world to look at him as being, or if not the whole world, then at least, you know, at least his city. Like, he wanted to essentially own the city, and he wanted them to come to him and see him as being a savior because he was human. And that was his motivation. I'm human, Superman is not human. Therefore, you should bow down to me. You should like me. You should give me the accolades. You should not be looking at me with disgust. And it really sort of boiled down to a matter of it kind of being a bit about his ego at the same time. Like, I look at I talk about the villain that I'm developing, or redeveloping, I should say. And, I see a lot of, and this is probably going to be a theme in like a lot of my different works, but there's sort of like this theme and motivation of, not manipulation, but it's sort of like this theme of not being greedy. Oh my goodness, my words are going away. But because it's sort of like the same, like they want to take advantage of. They want to, and I know that as I keep talking, it's gonna finally come. It's gonna finally come to me. Or it's gonna come to me after I decide to start the video. Oh, this is so aggravating. So their motivation is, or the villain for me, the motivation is to get ahead. She wants to be in control. And there's a lot of villains because we see a lot of it. And because that's really kind of like the progressive ideology in a way, even though I'm not saying that my villains are going to be progressives, because, the power hungry person has been around before progressivism had a name. But I'm kind of getting lost right now because like this word that I keep trying to like get is bugging me. Ambition is the word. I had to stop the video. I had to completely stop the video because I just was like, I can't not have this word. And because it was bothering me so much. But I think great villains are sort of like villains who have this kind of ambition. And yeah, because when you think about it, Lex Luthor has ambition. He has the ambition to be successful. He became he became wealthy. He built his own company because he had the ambition. He has the ambition to want to take over from Superman, of wanting to be in control. So everything he does is surrounded by that. And he does it, you know, in this rebirth especially, he does it. Oh, but you're hearing my rice cooker, which sings to me when it's done. But I know, I know in the rebirth, it's it's that motivation of wanting to take over from Superman and not believing that he is a villain, even though they kind of fall out here, you know, because here's the thing, his motivations aren't very good because his motivations are self motivated. And when you think about it, I think that's really kind of like the easiest way to think of a great villain. Normally, your villains are going to be completely self motivated. There's a great book that I read a couple of years ago called Liars by Glenn Beck. And it was him going through the history of some of the key figures in the progressive movement of the 20th century. I highly recommend it. And then he has like 50 pages of citations. And if you're feeling really ambitious, I would totally suggest that you go and you look up those citations and you look it up for yourself. I think, but one of the things that kept coming across in a lot of the stories that he told from history is that a lot of the problems happen and a lot of these people, who were villainous, it really kind of stemmed from not just terrible things that happened to them in the past. And this is why I say being hurt doesn't matter as much as your reaction to being hurt. If, if I have a husband and he has an affair on me, and, my reaction is to completely destroy his and the woman's life, a la some of the revenge, like wife revenge movies that we see. That doesn't make me the hero. That actually kind of makes me the villain. Why? Because it's me being completely self motivated. It's me not having any grace. It's me not stepping back and, untangling my emotions. That's me being completely reactionary versus, you know, versus if I see it and then like maybe I pull back for a couple of days and I work out the emotions in private, and then I come back and, you're willing to have sort of like an actual conversation and things like that, whether I decide to stay in the marriage or not. But, you know, like I'm not motivated for revenge. the progressive movement, and this is why I really don't like the progressive movement, because a lot of it seems to be motivated by revenge. I talked about yesterday how EBS pointed out that a lot of these people kept saying, stop buying our stuff. And, or for those who were just moderate, get out of our industry. We don't want you working in our companies. And so many of them then walked away and said, okay, well, you don't want us here. We're going. But then that wasn't good enough as well. Then they had to follow along. Then they had to be completely nasty. Then they had to tweet every day, tweet pictures of their buttholes and, and nasty, nasty, nasty things that they keep tweeting, to where it sort of becomes, well, who is actually the bad guy? The answer is them, because they're completely self-motivated. It isn't about protecting anyone, though they throw out all the time, because let's be honest, the villain is the hero of their own story, because they don't realize how much they're completely self-motivated. They have this tendency to believe that they are doing it for the greater good. Hot Fuzz is a beautiful example of this. Like, as a movie, it is absolutely perfect, and I love it. I I will admit, because I remember seeing it in a theater. I remember, like, I loved Shaun of the Dead because Shaun of the Dead was really hilarious. And then I saw Hot Fuzz in the movie theater. And at the time, I didn't understand Hot Fuzz, so I didn't enjoy it as much as Shaun of the Dead. So I thought it wasn't that great. But then I bought it because I wanted to relook at it, and I've loved it ever since. Ever since, because I finally got it. It's it's a movie that you can look at and you can say, kind of more conservative than it probably meant to be. Because when you look at the council, and you look at the people of the village, the point is, for them, they thought that they were, doing it for the greater good. They were cleaning up their village. They were ensuring that there was no crime. They were ensuring that everything was beautiful. They were ensuring that everything was picture perfect. And, even their saying was, that it was for the greater good. That was their motivation. It was completely for the greater good. But here's the thing. In their doing it for the greater good, what happens? You end up murdering people. And you end up murdering them for the most arbitrary of things. And you're doing it because, in your mind, for the greater good, to win this award that we've been winning all the time, that means it's okay to murder. So it doesn't become about saving the village and keeping the village nice. It becomes completely selfish and self-motivated, in that we want to win this award. And really, it's all about what we want. That is that is why SJWs are kind of the villains of today, because it really isn't about protecting minorities. It isn't about protecting, LGBT plus people. It isn't about protecting women. If it was, then they would actually listen to the people who said, hey, I can think for myself. But when your attitude is purely what you think doesn't matter, it's only what we think, and you need to just let us think for you or do things for you, and you get treated as if you are an idiot. Because they all have that habit of treating people like they're idiots. Well, now you're in the territory of being made a villain. So I guess, to a degree, just to kind of recap, because I didn't really want to talk about it in terms of SJWs, but I'm kind of giving like examples of behavior, because we're talking about, picking apart the idea of a villain, and, looking at sort of the simplified complexity, I should say, of it, because essentially it all boils down to their motivation. And if you're going to make a villain, you really need to make sure that they have a really great motivation. And that motivation cannot just be because of something that happened to them in the past. It really kind of has to be either their response to being hurt in the past, or it has to be a character flaw trait, because, oh, that's actually a great way to look at it. So when you're developing character, one of the questions they ask you all the time is, what is your character's fatal flaw? A problem with SJW characters is that a lot of times they don't have a fatal flaw, and that's usually because they themselves are just completely the flaw. So you have to think about the villain this way, because they're the hero of their own story. So when you do the characteristics, you have to understand that it's most likely that that character flaw is going to be what motivates their whole reasoning behind what they do as the villain. A fatal flaw for Lex Luthor, going back to the example from comics that I've been talking about, character motivation or fatal flaw for Lex Luthor would be his ambition. It would be his ego. It would be his, jealousy, because a lot of that kind of like pairs, and it would be those things. He does it because he's ambitious. He does it because he is jealous. He does it, because he has these fatal flaws, and it's these fatal flaws that he is now amplified because he doesn't see them as being fatal flaws. And that is definitely how I want to end, because I like that. Character, right. Sorry, I'm so excited because that just really kind of sums it up for me as well, that your villain essentially has amplified their fatal flaw because they don't realize that it's an actual flaw. And it is true to life. Everyone who is a villain, even in real life, and we now see plenty of villains in real life, but anyone who is a villain, it really is the fact that they don't see their fatal flaw as actually being a flaw. I'm going to end it there. I'm going to say, have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. And I really kind of hope that this, even though it's kind of rambly, but if you made it to the end, I really kind of hope that, it gets you thinking about the kind of villains of your story you would like to have, because I really do believe that complex villains need to make a strong return, because it just gives your story that extra oomph. Yeah. So anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.